Vega led the way, her sharp eyes scanning for patrols. Ramirez, still limping from his injuries, carried the EMP charges, his grip firm despite the pain. Lang stayed close to Ward, her portable console strapped to her arm as she monitored alien communications. They encountered resistance almost immediately. Alien drones, sleek and lethal, swarmed their position, forcing the team to scatter. The firefight was brutal, every second feeling like an eternity as the team fought to stay alive. Vega's sharpshooting kept the drones at bay, while Lang hacked into their systems to create brief windows of opportunity. When they finally reached the outskirts of the Nexus, the sight stopped them in their tracks. The alien structure rose from the ground like a twisted, organic spire, its surface pulsating with an eerie, bioluminescent glow. Surrounding it were dozens of alien soldiers and war machines, their movements precise and unyielding. But it wasn't just the aliens that gave the team pause. The ground around the Nexus was cracked and scorched, and faint, red glowing veins pulsed beneath the surface. One of the entities was there, a towering, shadowy figure that seemed to phase in and out of reality. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if studying the Nexus. The aliens kept their distance, their weapons trained on the entity but not firing. Lang's voice was barely a whisper. They're afraid of it. They're trying to keep it away from the Nexus. Ward clenched his fists. We don't have time to wait for it to leave. We stick to the plan. The team crept closer, every step feeling like a gamble with death. The entity seemed unaware of their presence, its focus entirely on the Nexus. When they reached the outer perimeter, Lang began to set up a jammer to disrupt the alien defenses. Ramirez placed the first EMP charge, his movement slow and deliberate. Just as the team prepared to move to the next point, a piercing shriek cut through the air. The entity turned, its glowing eyes locking onto them. At the same time, the aliens reacted, their weapons lighting up the night as they opened fire not at the entity, but at the humans. Move! Ward shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. The team scattered, the carefully laid plan unraveling in an instant. The entity moved with unnatural speed, its form shifting and twisting as it closed the distance. Vega fired at it, her bullets disappearing into its shadowy mass with no effect. Lang screamed as her console sparked, the jammer overloaded by the entity's presence. Ramirez managed to arm a second charge before he was hit, collapsing with a cry of pain. Ward grabbed Lang, pulling her to her feet. We can't stop now. Keep going. But as they ran, the ground beneath them began to quake. The entity wasn't just targeting them, it was targeting the Nexus itself. The spire began to crack, its glowing surface dimming as the entity unleashed a wave of destructive energy. Ward's mind raced. They had come to destroy the Nexus, but now it seemed the entity would do it for them at a cost they couldn't predict. If the Nexus fell to the entity's power, it might trigger a chain reaction that would doom them all. And in that moment, Ward realized the horrifying truth: they weren't just fighting for humanity's survival. They were caught in a war between forces far beyond their comprehension. The entity's assault on the alien Nexus had been a devastating sight, yet the team had no time to marvel or mourn. The structure, once a towering symbol of the invaders' strength, now lay in ruins, glowing faintly with dying embers of alien energy. The strike team huddled in the remains of a collapsed building, catching their breath as chaos raged around them. Alien soldiers fought desperately to salvage what they could, their movements frantic and uncoordinated in the aftermath of the Nexus's destruction. Ward crouched low, his chest heaving as he surveyed the battlefield. The charges are set, but we never even needed them. That thing took out the Nexus for us, he muttered. Vega, nursing a deep gash on her arm, spat blood onto the ground. Yeah, and almost took us with it. What the hell was that thing even doing here? It didn't care about us, or the aliens it just destroyed. Lang, visibly shaken, tapped furiously on her console. We need to move. The energy signatures around this place are spiking. Whatever we thought we knew about the entities, we're wrong. There's something more going on. Ward turned to Ramirez, who was slumped against a crumbling wall, his face pale but defiant. "Can you still move?" Ramirez nodded weakly. "Just give me a direction, boss. I didn't come this far to sit out the end." Ward gripped his shoulder, then addressed the team. "We've done what we came to do. We crippled their command structure, and now we need to regroup with the rest of the resistance. Let's get out of this hellhole before." A low, resonating hum interrupted him. The ground beneath them trembled violently, and a sharp crack split the air like a thunderclap. Lang's eyes widened as her console went haywire, sparks flying as it overloaded. "What now?" Vega growled, raising her weapon. Lang stared at the readings, her voice trembling. "Something's coming. Something massive." The team scrambled out of the ruins, weaving through the debris-strewn battlefield as the tremors grew stronger. Ward led them toward the extraction point, where resistance forces had promised to rendezvous. But even as they ran, the air around them seemed to change. The sky, already a murky mix of smoke and fire, darkened further, an unnatural stillness falling over the battlefield. Then they saw it. A massive tear in the sky, like a wound in the fabric of reality itself, split open above the battlefield. From within the rift emerged a colossal, biomechanical structure, its form shifting and pulsating with an alien rhythm. It wasn't like anything they had seen before, not the invaders' sleek war machines, nor the ancient, chaotic entities. This was something else entirely, something worse. The structure descended slowly, its immense size dwarfing even the ruins of the alien nexus. Tendrils of dark energy snaked outward from its core, spreading across the ground like veins. Where the energy touched, the earth blackened and crumbled, as though life itself was being drained away. Lang gasped. That's not alien tech. That's human," Ward finished, his voice grim. Vega looked at him in disbelief. "What are you talking about? That thing is clearly not ours." Ward shook his head. "Not ours, but it's made with human design principles. Look at the symmetry, the patterns. This thing. It's been built using our knowledge. Our technology." Lang's console flickered back to life, displaying a distorted transmission. A garbled voice, unmistakably human, crackled through the static. "This is Project Umbra testing fail-safe activated. Purification protocol: humanity's salvation, surrender or perish." Lang's face paled as the realization hit. This isn't an alien weapon. It's ours. A black project, something our leaders must have been working on before the invasion. They must have known the aliens were coming, and they built this monstrosity to save humanity. Ramirez cursed under his breath. Save humanity? It's tearing the planet apart. Ward clenched his fists, his mind racing. They must have set it to activate if the aliens gained too much ground. A last-ditch effort to wipe out everything: aliens, entities, humans, whatever it takes to reset the board. Vega's voice was ice cold. "And what? Hope whoever's left can start over? That's insane." Lang pointed at the rift. "That thing is still drawing power. If it stabilizes, it'll unleash whatever purification protocol it was programmed for. We won't survive that." The resistance forces weren't prepared for this. As the rift widened and the structure fully emerged, its tendrils began targeting both humans and aliens alike. Alien war machines were pulled apart and consumed by the energy, their remains absorbed into the structure. Resistance fighters who strayed too close were vaporized in an instant. Even the entities seemed wary, their movements hesitant as they avoided direct contact with the new threat. Ward's comm unit crackled to life. Harper's voice, panicked but determined, came through. "Ward, do you copy? What the hell is that thing?" "It's ours," Ward replied, his tone bitter. "Some kind of fail-safe weapon. We didn't know about it, but it's here now, and it's targeting everything." Harper swore. "We're being overrun out here. Whatever it's doing, it's not discriminating. We've got reports of entire battalions just gone. We need a plan, and fast. Ward glanced at Lang, who was furiously analyzing the structure. Tell me you've got something, he said. Lang nodded slowly. There's a core. It's heavily shielded, but if we can breach it, we might be able to shut it down. But what? Vega demanded. Lang hesitated. The core isn't fully human. It's hybridized, part human, part alien. Whatever's controlling it, it's sentient. It might even be aware of us. As if in response to her words, the structure emitted a deep, resonating pulse. The team staggered as a voice, cold and emotionless, echoed in their minds. Humanity's survival requires purification. Submit, or face extinction. Ramirez gritted his teeth. Yeah, that sounds aware to me. The team had no choice but to press on. They moved toward the structure, navigating through a battlefield that had devolved into utter chaos. Humans and aliens alike fought desperately, but their efforts were meaningless against the towering monolith. As they drew closer, Ward couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The structure's tendrils seemed to move with purpose, blocking paths and funneling them toward a specific entry point. Lang confirmed his fears. It's guiding us. It wants us to come inside. Then we give it what it wants, Ward said grimly. And we make sure it regrets it. Inside the structure, the atmosphere was suffocating. The walls pulsed with a sickly light, and the air was thick with an unnatural hum. The core loomed ahead, a massive, glowing sphere encased in layers of shifting, metallic plates. Lang began working on the console near the core, her hands trembling as she bypassed layers of security. This isn't just a weapon, she murmured. It's a vault. It's been storing information about the aliens, the entities, us. It knows everything. Before she could elaborate, the voice returned, louder and more forceful. You cannot comprehend the necessity of this action. Humanity's flaws must be eradicated for survival to endure. Ward raised his weapon, his voice steady. We'll decide what humanity's survival looks like. Not you. The core pulsed violently, and the structure began to shake. Lang's console lit up with warnings. It's activating. She shouted. We have to destroy it now. As Ward prepared to fire, the ground beneath them cracked open, revealing a deep chasm. From within the darkness, a new presence emerged, something ancient and powerful, drawn by the structure's energy. The team stared in horror as the entities converged on the core, their forms twisting and merging into a single, monstrous being. The battlefield above erupted into chaos as the invaders, the resistance, and the structure's defenses all turned their attention to this new, apocalyptic threat. Ward tightened his grip on his weapon. This just got a whole lot worse. And as the core's voice clashed with the guttural roar of the entity, humanity's future hung by a thread, balanced on the edge of oblivion. The battlefield was unrecognizable. Where there had once been cities, there were now charred ruins and oceans of craters. The sky bled crimson, stained by the invaders' orbital bombardments and the rising columns of smoke from Earth's final stand. What remained of humanity was scattered, a patchwork of resistant cells and desperate survivors clinging to the idea that their species could still prevail. Amid this chaos, Commander Ward stood in the heart of the Resistance's command bunker, his face illuminated by the flickering glow of a holo map that displayed Earth's rapidly diminishing territory. Behind him, the core team Lang, Vega, Ramirez, and Harper stood in grim silence, waiting for him to speak. Every second felt like borrowed time, each breath a reminder of how close they were to annihilation. This is it, Ward said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of what he was about to ask. The invaders' command center is vulnerable. We've disrupted their ground operations, taken out key nodes, and pushed them to the brink. But they still have the upper hand. Their central hub, the source of their coordination and power. If we don't take it out, none of this will matter. Lang, still nursing wounds from their last encounter, stepped forward, her hands trembling as she manipulated the holo map. Their command center isn't just a structure. It's alive biomechanical, like the rest of their tech. It's adaptive, self-healing, and surrounded by layers of defenses we haven't even begun to understand. But she paused, glancing at Ward. But? Vega pressed, her tone sharp. Lang took a deep breath. We've identified a vulnerability. A core relay at the heart of the structure that manages its defenses and coordination. If we can reach it, we can shut it down. But it's buried beneath miles of enemy fortifications, automated defenses, and... She hesitated. And what? Ward asked. Lang's voice was barely a whisper. The central node isn't just a machine. It's been fused with one of their commanders. A biological mind is at the heart of the system, guiding it. If we want to destroy it, we'll have to kill it face to face. The resistance forces mobilized for what they knew would be their final mission. Across the remnants of Earth, fighters, scientists, and even civilians stepped forward, offering whatever skills or resources they had left. Makeshift vehicles were retrofitted with salvaged alien tech, weapons were augmented with plasma cores scavenged from fallen invaders, and every last piece of usable gear was pressed into service. Ward's team prepared in silence, each member lost in their own thoughts. Vega meticulously cleaned her weapon, her fingers steady despite the storm raging in her mind. She had always been the sharp edge of the team, the unrelenting fighter. But now, as she glanced at the dog tags of fallen comrades hanging from her neck, she felt the crushing weight of expectation. If this was her last stand, she was determined to make it count. Ramirez, his injuries hastily patched up, sat sharpening a blade. You know, he said, breaking the silence, I used to think dying for a cause was a waste. Now? I get it. If we don't do this, there's no tomorrow for anyone. Lang, hunched over a console, was a blur of motion as she downloaded schematics and prepared hacking protocols. Her hand shook, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She hadn't slept in days, but her mind burned with determination. If she failed, the mission would fail, and humanity's last chance would slip away. Ward, standing apart from the group, stared at a photo of his family, now long gone. He tucked it into his vest and turned to face his team. We've survived worse, he said, his voice calm. We'll survive this too. We have to. The mission began under the cover of darkness, or what passed for darkness in a world where the sky was perpetually lit by the glow of alien war machines. Resistance forces launched diversionary strikes across the planet, drawing the invaders' attention away from the main assault. Explosions lit up the horizon as ragtag fleets of fighters engaged alien ships in the skies, buying precious time for Ward's team. The strike team approached the command center in a stolen alien dropship, its cloaking technology masking their approach. From the air, the structure was a grotesque monolith, pulsating with a sickly green light and surrounded by a swarm of alien drones. The air hummed with energy, and the ground below was a labyrinth of trenches and barricades. As they descended, Lang's voice crackled over the comms. We're in the blind spot. We've got a 5-minute window before the system recalibrates and detects us. Then let's move, Ward ordered. The team disembarked swiftly, moving through the outer perimeter with precision. The alien defenses were formidable turrets that fired beams of searing plasma, drones that patrolled with unerring accuracy, and foot soldiers that seemed to blend into the shadows. But the team had prepared for this. Vega led the charge, her modified rifle cutting through enemy ranks with deadly efficiency. Ramirez followed, his blade a blur, as he took down soldiers in close quarters. Lang stayed close to Ward, her portable console a lifeline as she hacked into enemy systems to disable traps and reroute patrols. As they pushed deeper into the structure, the environment became increasingly alien. The walls pulsed like living tissue, and the air grew thick with a metallic tang. The team's comms were filled with distorted whispers, an unsettling reminder that the structure was alive and aware of their presence. Lang stopped abruptly, her face pale. It's trying to interface with my systems. It knows we're here. Ward's jaw tightened. Can you block it? I'm trying, she said, her fingers flying across the console. But it's learning. Every move I make, it counters faster. A sudden screech echoed through the corridors, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. Incoming! Vega shouted. The team barely had time to take cover as a new type of alien soldier emerged, hulking, biomechanical creatures armed with energy cannons that tore through walls. The resistance fighters had faced countless horrors, but these monstrosities were something else entirely. They're adapting, Ward said grimly. They're throwing everything they've got at us. Good, Vega snarled, firing off a shot that brought one of the creatures down. Let them come. The battles grew fiercer as they neared the core. Every step forward was paid for in blood and sweat. Ramirez was hit, his armor scorched by a plasma blast, but he refused to stop. Lang's console finally succumbed to the alien interference, forcing her to rely on manual overrides and instinct. Vega's ammo ran low, but she fought on with scavenged weapons, her determination unyielding. When they finally reached the core chamber, they were battered, exhausted, and barely holding on. The central node loomed before them, a grotesque fusion of flesh and machinery. The alien commander, its body grotesquely merged with the structure, glared at them with glowing, hate-filled eyes. Lang's voice trembled as she whispered, "That's not just a commander. It's a hive mind. It's the source of their entire network." Ward tightened his grip on his weapon. "Then we take it out." The chamber erupted into chaos as the team launched their assault. The commander's voice echoed in their minds, a cacophony of rage and despair. The walls themselves seemed to fight against them, tendrils lashing out and alien drones swarming from hidden alcoves. Lang worked frantically to disable the core's defenses while the others held off the onslaught. Vega fought like a woman possessed, her every move calculated and deadly. Ramirez, despite his injuries, refused to back down, his blade carving a path through the enemy. Ward focused on the commander, his every shot aimed to weaken its defenses. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that their time was running out. The core's energy was building, a pulsating glow that signaled an imminent catastrophic release. "Lang!" Ward shouted. "We're out of time. I need 30 seconds. She screamed back, her hands flying over the console. "We don't have 30 seconds. Vega shouted, firing wildly as more drones poured into the chamber. Ward made a decision. "Lang, get it done. The rest of you, cover her." The team closed ranks around Lang, fighting with everything they had. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of burning flesh. And as the core's glow reached its peak, Ward knew they were standing on the edge of oblivion. But then, just as Lang's console flashed green, signaling success, the ground shook violently. From the shadows beyond the core, a new presence emerged, something massive, ancient, and unmistakably hostile. The commander's voice, for the first time, faltered. And humanity's desperate bid for survival took an even darker turn. The chamber fell silent, but it was the kind of silence that came with an unbearable weight. The glow of the alien core dimmed, its pulsating rhythm slowing to a crawl as the team caught their breath. Lang slumped against her console, her chest heaving, and her hands trembling from exertion. The commander, half merged with the grotesque mass of machinery, sagged lifelessly in its cradle. "Is it over?" Ramirez rasped, blood dripping from a deep gash on his arm. Ward held up a fist, signaling everyone to remain alert. His eye scanned the chamber, but something felt wrong. It wasn't victory that hung in the air, it was foreboding. Lang looked up, her voice weak but tinged with confusion. "It worked. The core's defenses are down. Their network is collapsing. We did it." But Ward didn't lower his weapon. His instinct screamed otherwise. No. Something's not right. The ground shuddered beneath their feet, subtle at first, then violent enough to send cracks spidering through the organic walls of the chamber. A deep, guttural sound echoed through the space, not a voice, but a vibration that seemed to pierce straight through their bodies. "What the hell is that?" Vega asked, reloading her rifle with shaking hands. Lang's console flickered back to life, but the data it displayed was nothing she'd ever seen before. I don't know," she stammered. "The system's still active, but it's changing. Rewriting itself." Ward moved to Lang's side, his voice sharp. "Changing into what?" Before she could answer, the commander's lifeless form twitched. The team froze as its glowing eyes reignited, brighter and more menacing than before. But this time, the voice that filled the chamber wasn't the commander's, it was deeper, more resonant, and utterly alien. "Fools," it boomed, the sound reverberating like the toll of a massive bell. "You think you've severed the head of the snake, but you've merely awakened the beast." The team instinctively stepped back, their weapons trained on the writhing mass that was now reshaping itself. The walls of the chamber began to ripple and contort, the organic material sloughing away to reveal layers of black, chitinous plating that pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly energy. Lang's console beeped frantically as new data flooded in. Her eyes widened in horror. It's not just a command center. It's a seed. A harbinger. A harbinger of what? Vega demanded. Lang's voice cracked. Of something worse. This invasion was just the beginning. They were preparing for something bigger. Something ancient. The team barely had time to process Lang's words before the chamber erupted into chaos. The commander's twisted form tore itself free from its cradle, its body now a towering amalgamation of metal and flesh. Tendrils shot out from its body, lashing at the team with terrifying speed. "Move!" Ward bellowed, shoving Lang out of the way as a tendril smashed into the console where she'd been standing. Sparks flew, and the console exploded, plunging the chamber into darkness save for the ominous glow of the harbinger. Ramirez dove behind a fallen chunk of debris, clutching his side where a tendril had grazed him. "So much for the easy part," he yelled, wincing in pain. Vega fired shot after shot, her rounds barely slowing the creature down. "This thing isn't like the others. It's evolving." Lang scrambled to recover what she could from her damaged equipment, her fingers flying across a portable tablet. "If we can overload the core again, we might be able to destabilize it," she shouted over the din. Ward nodded. "Do it. Ramirez, Vega, buy her time." The fight that ensued was unlike anything they'd faced before. The harbinger was relentless, its tendrils multiplying and moving with uncanny precision. For every strike they dodged, another came from an unexpected angle. It wasn't just attacking, it was learning. Ramirez threw a grenade, the explosion briefly staggering the creature. "That's all I've got left," he yelled, his voice tinged with desperation. Vega darted across the chamber, her movements a blur as she drew the harbinger's attention. "Come on, you ugly bastard. Come get me," she taunted, unloading her last clip into its glowing core. Ward covered Lang as she worked, his shots aimed to keep the tendrils at bay. But even he was beginning to feel the weight of the battle. They were running out of time, and the harbinger wasn't slowing down. Just as Lang finished inputting the final sequence to overload the core, the harbinger froze. Its tendrils retracted, and its body went rigid. For a moment, the team thought they'd won. But then the chamber began to tremble, and a new sound filled the air, a low, droning hum that grew louder with each passing second. The harbinger's form began to dissolve, its mass breaking apart into countless shards of glowing black material that floated upward, coalescing into a massive, swirling vortex. Lang's tablet blinked with a single line of text, signal activated. Awaiting response. Lang's face went pale. It sent a signal. A distress call. Ward's stomach dropped. To what? Lang looked at him, her eyes filled with dread. To whatever comes next. The vortex expanded, and from its depths emerged shapes that defied comprehension. Massive, angular constructs that seemed to shift and change with every passing second. They were neither ships nor creatures, but something in between, living machines that radiated a palpable sense of malice. The team could only watch in stunned silence as the constructs began to spread out, their forms casting long shadows across the chamber. "This isn't just an invasion," Vega said, her voice barely audible. "It's an extermination." Ward clenched his fists. "Not if we can help it." But even as he spoke, the reality of their situation sank in. The Resistance had fought tooth and nail to survive the invaders' assault, but now they were facing something far worse, an enemy that made the invaders look like pawns in a much larger game. The vortex pulsed once more, and a voice, cold, mechanical, and utterly devoid of emotion, echoed across the chamber. Phase 2 initiated. Prepare for assimilation. And just like that, the battle for humanity's survival had become a battle for the survival of existence itself. The chamber shook violently as the swirling vortex above them expanded, its heart pulsing with an energy that felt ancient and terrifying. The humanoid constructs, colossal beings of shifting metal and alien energy, began to move in unison, their cold eyes scanning the battlefield as they floated down from the vortex, their movements mechanical but deliberate. Ward's mind raced. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The situation had escalated beyond anything they could have ever anticipated. The invaders had been bad enough, but what emerged now was far worse. An invasion not just of Earth, but of all existence, a mission of assimilation, to rip the very essence of humanity from the world. The Resistance had given everything to make it this far. There were no reinforcements, no safe zones left. It was all or nothing. "Lang!" Ward shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Is the core ready?" Lang was hunched over her console, her fingers flying over the keys with a desperation that matched Ward's. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she inputted the final commands to activate the weapon they had been working on, the one hope they had left. "Almost," she muttered, her voice tight with exhaustion. "It's unstable, but it could work. If we can get close enough to the heart of the vortex and trigger the overload, we might have a shot at stopping them." "Then we don't have much time," Ward said, gritting his teeth as he surveyed the advancing machines. "Vega, Ramirez, cover Lang. We need that weapon activated." Vega gave a curt nod, already moving to position herself in front of Lang. Ramirez didn't speak, he just started firing, his weapon spitting rounds into the massive constructs. The bullets ricocheted off their metal skin, doing little to slow them down, but the sheer volume of fire distracted them long enough to buy the others a few precious seconds. Ward's eyes narrowed as he scanned the room. He could feel the sense of impending doom pressing in on all sides. The machines, cold and calculating, were relentless, nothing like the invaders they'd faced before. And even if they destroyed the command center, even if they took down the Harbinger, this new threat would still remain. The machines were closing in, but there was something else in the air now. A presence. Something even more insidious than the alien invaders. The feeling of being watched. Of being hunted. "Stay focused!" Ward shouted, pushing his team forward. "Lang, do it now!" Lang took a deep breath, her hand shaking as she slammed her palm against the final key. The console lit up with a sudden surge of energy, and the ground beneath them trembled. The vortex overhead rumbled in response, as if it knew what was coming. "Activate!" Lang yelled. And then, everything happened at once. A shockwave of energy shot through the chamber, blasting outwards in every direction. The swirling vortex collapsed in on itself, folding in upon the alien constructs and the heart of the invaders' system. The Harbinger's monstrous form disintegrated, its pieces scattered into nothingness. The machines, the true threat, writhed and screamed, their metallic forms bending and contorting, their very essence being undone by the immense force of the weapon they had unleashed. For a moment, there was silence. But only for a moment. The machines began to reassemble, their broken bodies repairing themselves faster than any human could react. The energy emanating from the vortex flared back to life, but now, something was different. A dark shadow began to manifest in the center of the chamber, something vast, ancient, and beyond comprehension. The true leader, the mastermind behind the invaders, was emerging from the depths of the vortex. A massive figure, taller than any of the machines, humanoid in shape but made of pure dark matter, formed in front of them. Its eyes, black holes of void and endless depth, glowed with a malignant force. It was not just an invader. It was the creator. The orchestrator. Ward's heart pounded. What the hell is that? Lang's voice trembled with horror. That's the being behind it all. The one who controls the machines. The one who sent the signal to all of existence. Ramirez and Vega backed away instinctively, their weapons useless against the creature before them. "We can't fight that," Vega said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ward was silent for a long moment, his mind racing. This was it. The end of everything they had fought for. It was too powerful. Too far beyond anything they could comprehend. And yet, "We don't need to fight it," Ward said, his voice suddenly calm. "We need to trap it." Lang looked up at him, confusion in her eyes. Trap it? How? Ward looked at the dark figure, his gaze unwavering. "We know its weakness. It draws its power from the core, from the signal it's been sending. If we can destroy the source, we'll cut it off from its power. It won't be able to fight us anymore." A spark of realization flickered in Lang's eyes. "The core," she whispered. "We have to get to it," Ward said, his voice hard. "Now." The team made their move, charging forward with everything they had. The dark figure loomed above them, but it didn't attack. Instead, it watched them with an almost eerie calm, as if it knew something they didn't. But Ward wasn't going to wait. The fate of humanity rested on this. He could feel it in his bones. Vega and Ramirez laid down covering fire, forcing the machines to hesitate just long enough for Lang to slip past them, her face set in determination. Ward followed close behind, his heart pounding with each step. They reached the center of the chamber, where the core lay exposed, its energy pulsating wildly. Ward grabbed Lang's arm, pulling her closer to the core. "Do it now!" he shouted. Lang didn't hesitate. Her fingers flew over the console, activating the sequence that would sever the connection between the dark figure and its power source. The air crackled with energy, and then the core exploded. The chamber was bathed in light as the shockwave of energy sent everything flying. The dark figure screamed, a sound that shook the very foundations of reality itself. The machines fell to the ground, their power cut off, their forms dissolving into dark dust. And then, just as the light began to fade, Ward saw something that made his blood run cold. The dark figure was still standing. Its form was battered, broken, but it wasn't finished. It wasn't dead. And just like that, Ward knew, the war wasn't over. The true battle was about to begin. As the dust settled, Lang turned to Ward, her face pale, her voice trembling. We didn't destroy it. It's still alive." Ward's eyes hardened. "No. But we've given ourselves a chance." And in that moment, as the team stood amidst the ruins of the invaders' base, they understood the truth. The war was far from over. The fate of humanity still hung in the balance. And there was no turning back. The aftermath of the battle left the survivors in a strange limbo. Silence reigned in the chamber, the eerie quiet following the devastating blast that had destroyed the core. The dark figure, the mastermind behind the alien invaders, was still standing, though severely damaged. It was not defeated, but it was weaker than before. Ward stared at the entity, his heart racing. It had defied all logic, all reason. No amount of weapons, no amount of human ingenuity had fully destroyed it. But they had brought it down, and that was enough. The fact that it was still standing, though, made the victory feel hollow. Lang was breathing heavily, her hands trembling from the exertion, the toll of working with unstable alien technology. Vega, ever the soldier, stood guard, his weapon ready, scanning the room for any new threats. Ramirez's face was grim, his eyes never leaving the shattered core. He knew as well as anyone that the battle was far from over. "What happens now?" Vega asked, his voice low, his face unreadable. Ward took a deep breath, his gaze never leaving the dark figure before him. "We press on. We find a way to finish this." They gathered in a small, makeshift command center within the invaders' base, the ruins of their once advanced stronghold serving as their last sanctuary. The team, exhausted, bloodied, and bruised, sat huddled around Lang, who was at the heart of the operation. "I've analyzed the core," she said, her voice strained but steady. "It's not just a power source. It's a conduit for the entity's control over the machines. If we can overload it permanently, we can sever the connection to the invaders' forces. It'll be over." Ward listened intently, his face hardened. "And how do we do that without bringing it all down on our heads?" "We don't have much time," Lang continued, her gaze fixed on the holographic display in front of her. "But there's a way. We need to access the control module deep inside the heart of the base. The entity's power is anchored there. If we can sabotage the central system, the invaders' operations will collapse. It won't just cut off the machines, it'll sever the entity's control permanently." "How long until the entity regains full power?" Ramirez asked, his voice sharp, his tone tinged with urgency. Lang hesitated for a moment, then looked up at them. "A few hours at most. Once it adapts to the damage we caused, it will begin regenerating. We won't get another chance." Ward nodded. "Then we move fast. We hit the control module before it can adapt." The team set off, leaving their makeshift base behind, moving through the alien structure with a determination that only survivors could have. Every step was crucial. Every movement felt like it could be their last. The corridor stretched ahead of them, dimly lit by the flickering remnants of the invaders' technology. The further they went, the more the air seemed to thrum with energy, as though the walls themselves were alive. "Stay sharp," Ward muttered, his voice low, his grip tight on his weapon. Vega and Ramirez flanked Lang as they navigated the winding corridors, each corner potentially hiding a new threat. Lang's fingers flew across the holographic panel strapped to her arm, her mind whirling through calculations as she prepared to access the control module. "We're almost there," she said, her voice tight with focus. "I can feel it." They arrived at a massive chamber deep within the base. The room was dominated by a massive console at its center, an alien control hub far beyond human understanding. The air here crackled with energy, and the walls pulsed with the raw power of the alien entity that had orchestrated the invasion. Ward could feel it. Every breath he took seemed heavier, as though the weight of the world was bearing down on him. "This is it," Lang whispered. "We only have one shot at this." Ward stepped forward, his eyes scanning the chamber for any signs of danger. The alien forces had been quiet ever since the shockwave from their last attack. But that didn't mean they were safe. "Do it," Ward ordered, his voice firm, yet there was a sense of finality in it. Lang didn't hesitate. She connected herself to the console, her mind syncing with the alien interface. Her hands moved across the holographic controls, typing in lines of alien code as she bypassed layers of security protocols. Ward watched her closely, his breath catching as the tension in the room built to a crescendo. And then, the room shook. It wasn't the usual tremor of an alien base collapsing. It was something worse. The ground beneath their feet shifted violently, the walls vibrating with an energy that seemed to pulse with a sinister rhythm. The control module activated, its core glowing with blinding light, and the doors to the chamber slammed shut with a deafening thud. Ward's heart raced. "Lang, what's happening?" Lang's voice trembled. It's not just a control module. It's a trap. The entity has anticipated us." Suddenly, a massive figure appeared in the doorway. It was the dark figure, the entity that had caused so much destruction. It had fully regenerated, its form even more terrifying than before. It towered over them, its eyes burning with malicious intent. "Run!" Ward shouted, but it was too late. The creature lunged. A battle ensued in the heart of the alien base. The team fought with everything they had. Ward and Vega laid down cover fire as Ramirez and Lang worked to override the alien control system. But the entity was relentless. It struck with lightning speed, its tendrils of darkness reaching out to crush everything in its path. Ward's chest tightened. The clock was ticking. Every second mattered. Lang gasped, her hands moving frantically over the alien interface, her mind racing. "I'm almost there. Just a little longer." The ground shook once more, and Ward turned to face the oncoming danger. The dark figure was closing in, its energy crackling in the air like an electric storm. And then, in a moment of brilliance, Vega and Ramirez acted in tandem. Vega dove forward, distracting the entity, while Ramirez fired a shot directly at the base of its core. The creature staggered, its form flickering as it fought to maintain its shape. "Now, Lang!" Ward yelled. Lang slammed the final key, and a blinding light erupted from the console. The energy in the room surged, and the entity howled in pain. The air hummed with the power of the blast, and everything seemed to slow. The world went dark. When Ward opened his eyes, everything had changed. The invaders' forces had collapsed. The machines were gone, and the alien energy that had once dominated the chamber was no more. But the cost had been immense. The war was over, but not without sacrifice. Vega, Ramirez, and Lang stood by him, each of them battered, bruised, but alive. They had done it. They had stopped the invasion, destroyed the entity, and saved humanity from annihilation. But in the silence that followed, Ward couldn't help but wonder what had they truly won. Was the universe really theirs to claim? Or was this just the beginning of something much larger? The team returned to Earth, their mission complete, but their thoughts were heavy with the future. They had survived the impossible, but at what cost? They had saved humanity, but they had also unlocked the mysteries of a universe far beyond their comprehension. As they looked to the stars, Ward knew one thing for certain: the fight for humanity's place in the cosmos was only just beginning. As the survivors looked up to the sky, the questions lingered. The invasion was over, but the story of humanity's survival had only just begun. The war had tested them all. It had pushed them to their limits and forced them to confront their deepest fears. Through ingenuity, courage, and sacrifice, humanity had prevailed. But the victory came at a price. The survivors would carry the scars of the battle with them for the rest of their lives, and the questions they had asked about the universe would continue to haunt them. What was their place in the cosmos? Had they merely survived the first wave of an even greater threat? In the quiet aftermath, one thing was certain: humanity had proven its resilience. They had fought back against overwhelming odds and emerged victorious. But the future was vast, and the mysteries of the universe were far from solved. As the stars blinked in the night sky, the team knew that the next chapter of humanity's story was yet to be written. And it was a story they would write, not with fear, but with hope.